Welcome back to Kleppers Corner, Today in History, where we ask life's deepest question. What did humanity screw up, invent, or accidentally improve on this date? October 23rd, the day that seems to have looked at the entire timeline of civilization and said, you know what? Let's do all of it. Wars, revolutions, gadgets, and tiny blue communists. This day has it all. Empire building, empire collapsing, women demanding rights, and Steve Jobs demanding you throw away your Walkman. It's the kind of date that reminds us human progress is basically a series of PowerPoints titled, "We swear we'll get it right next time." Segment 2, the crucible of war. El Alamein and the moment Britain finally said, enough of this nonsense. On October 23, 1942, British General Bernard Montgomery kicked off the Second Battle of El Alamein, the turning point of World War II in North Africa. Before this, the Allies had been losing faster than a British pub on a Sunday lockdown. Montgomery, ever the careful planner, unleashed Operation Lightfoot, named because soldiers were supposed to tread gently through minefields, a strategy only marginally better than calling it Operation Try Not to Explode. Monty's plan worked, eventually. After days of slow, grinding combat, British tanks broke through Rommel's defenses, and the Desert Fox finally ran out of gas, both literally and metaphorically. Churchill declared, "Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, never a defeat," which in political translation means, please forget the part where we almost lost the Suez Canal. El Alamein proved that patience, planning, and having more fuel than the other guy can occasionally beat mad dash through the desert as a strategy. It was the moment the Allies realized maybe, just maybe, Hitler wasn't a genius, just a man who shouldn't have invaded Russia and Egypt in the same decade. Segment 3, Battle of Leyte Gulf. 2 years later, the ocean itself exploded. Flash forward to October 23rd, 1944. Same date, new ocean. The United States Navy meets the Imperial Japanese Navy in the largest naval battle in history. The Japanese, desperate and nearly out of planes, decide to use their aircraft carriers as bait. Their plan relied on one thing, the hope that Admiral Halsey's ego would be even bigger than his fleet. Spoiler alert, it was. When Halsey chased the decoy carriers north, he left the invasion beaches nearly unguarded. Cue one of history's greatest oh crap moments. A tiny U.S. escort force of destroyers and baby carriers fought off a far larger Japanese fleet, launching torpedoes and smokescreens in a display of bravery that would later be described as completely insane. By the end, Japan's navy was shattered, and the first kamikaze attacks had begun, the grim foreshadowing that the war's final acts would get even darker. Leyte Gulf marked the moment America went from "we're surviving" to "we're dominating." If El Alamein was the end of the beginning, Leyte was the beginning of the end. And yes, that's also the exact line Churchill wished he'd written about this one too. Segment 4, the Battle of Philippi. Et tu, retirement plan? Back in 42 BC, the Roman Republic officially died on this date at the Battle of Philippi. Mark Antony and Octavian defeated Brutus, who decided to follow up stabbing Caesar with losing the war. When things went south, Brutus did what any self-respecting Roman general would do. He fell on his sword. Literally. Thus ended the dream of Republican Rome and began the empire. Because, apparently, assassinating a dictator doesn't always end dictatorship. Sometimes it just leads to a fancier dictator with better marble statues. So next time someone says, "let's take back the Republic," remember Brutus. It didn't go great. Segment 5, Battle of Edge Hill, when England decided family therapy was for the weak. Fast forward to 1642, and England was fighting over who was more chosen by God, the king or parliament. The Battle of Edge Hill was the first major clash of the English Civil War, and it ended in that most English of outcomes. Everyone claimed victory, no one was happy, and they all went home for tea. The stalemate meant the war would drag on for years, culminating in the unprecedented act of chopping off a king's head. Edge Hill was basically the pilot episode for The Crown, only with fewer accents and more blood. Segment 6, the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, when freedom lasted 2 weeks. October 23, 1956, students in Budapest protest Soviet control. Within hours, it's a full-blown revolution. Statues of Stalin topple, the people rejoice, and for 13 brief days, Hungarians taste freedom. Then the Soviets return with tanks and a vengeance. Thousands die, Prime Minister Imre Nagy is executed, and the West watches. on television. The U.S. offers thoughts and prayers, which is Cold War speak for good luck with that. Still, Hungary's rebellion mattered. It showed the world the Iron Curtain wasn't just metaphorical, it was backed by tanks. And it planted seeds that would bloom 3 decades later in the revolutions of 1989, proving that sometimes freedom's fuse burns slowly, but it does burn. Segment 7, the Beirut barracks bombing, when peacekeeping met reality. 40 years ago today, October 23, 1983, a truck bomb in Beirut killed 241 U.S. Marines and 58 French paratroopers. The blast was so powerful it lifted a 4-story building off its foundation, an act orchestrated by militants linked to Iran and what would become Hezbollah. America, stung and grieving, pulled out of Lebanon months later. The terrorists learned a devastating lesson. You could shape U.S. foreign policy with a single explosion. Osama bin Laden later cited Beirut as proof the West could be scared off. It was a tragic day that showed how easily peacekeeping can turn into target practice. It also marked a turning point in how wars would be fought. Not army versus army, but ideology versus patience. Spoiler, ideology usually has more explosives. Segment 8, the architecture of nations. Britain tries a marriage of convenience. On October 23, 1707, the first Parliament of Great Britain convened, officially uniting England and Scotland. Think of it as a political shotgun wedding where one side brought empire and the other brought whiskey. The English said, "We'll share everything," and the Scots said, "Including independence?" To which the English replied, "Ha! No." The union created a powerhouse state, but centuries later, the marriage counseling continues. Brexit even reignited talk of Scottish independence, proof that some unions age about as well as warm milk. Segment 9, the first National Women's Rights Convention, when women decided waiting patiently was overrated. October 23, 1850, Worcester, Massachusetts, over 1,000 delegates gather to demand women's rights. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone, and Sojourner Truth stand up to say, hey, maybe we'd like to own property and vote. Men naturally said, that sounds dangerous. This convention kicked off decades of activism, leading to the 19th Amendment 70 years later. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that women have to ask at least twice and wait a lifetime. Segment 10, the Wye River Memorandum, the peace process that almost processed peace. October 23, 1998, President Clinton brokers a deal between Israel's Netanyahu and the PLO's Arafat. The Wye River Memorandum promised land for security, trust for verification, and a temporary break from glaring at each other. Within weeks, everyone was back to glaring. Still, it showed how diplomacy works. Smile for the cameras, sign something, and hope no one reads the fine print that says subject to human nature. Segment 11, the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket, 10,000 lawsuits from the music industry. October 23, 2001, Steve Jobs unveils the iPod and accidentally reinvents culture. 1,000 songs in your pocket, he says, which was mind-blowing in a world still fighting over burned CDs. The iPod wasn't the first MP3 player, but it was the first one you actually wanted to touch. It saved the music industry from piracy and replaced owning albums with owning vibes. Eventually, it begat the iPhone, podcasts, and the modern addiction to scrolling, meaning, yes, the device that freed us from skipping CDs also enslaved us to screen time. Thanks, Steve. Segment 12, the Smurfs. Tiny blue communists take over pop culture. Also debuting on this day in 1958, the Smurfs. What began as background characters in a Belgian comic became a global sensation. They lived in a socialist utopia, wore identical hats, and had one woman. Basically, it was either a children's show or an allegory for every corporate office in America. The Smurfs proved that with the right marketing, even gibberish dialogue and blue skin can conquer the world, paving the way for both the Avatar franchise and modern politics. Segment 13, the human element. Birthdays, deaths, and a whole lot of legacy. Born this day, Johnny Carson, Pele, and Michael Crichton. That's talk show charisma, athletic perfection, and techno-paranoia all rolled into one cosmic joke. Carson defined late-night TV with charm so smooth it made cynicism fashionable. Pele redefined soccer as art, scoring goals like it was a moral duty. Crichton gave us dinosaurs with copyright lawyers. Together, they shaped pop culture more than most presidents. Also on this date, Christian Dior died, leaving behind the new look. Big skirts, tight waists, and the eternal truth that fashion trends, like empires, always come back around after collapsing dramatically. In conclusion, a tapestry of time. So what do we learn from October 23rd? That humanity's greatest hits tend to repeat. Empires rise, rebels revolt, tech companies promise freedom and deliver updates that need charging cables. From Brutus's dagger to the Beirut truck bomb, from women's rights to blue cartoon mushrooms, every chapter shows the same rhythm. Ambition, conflict, creation, collapse, reboot. This single date contains the DNA of civilization. Idealists facing tyrants, dreamers inventing gadgets, artists coloring outside the lines. If history were an iPod playlist, October 23rd would be the one labeled Everything, Shuffle. So next time the calendar rolls around, maybe look up and think, what ridiculous world-shaping thing are we about to do today? Because if history proves anything, it's that we're always one day away from another October 23rd.